Clowns were once a symbol of joy, bringing bright smiles, lively tunes, and infectious laughter. But everything shifted. It happened a few weeks ago, during a walk meant to clear my mind. On the edge of town, I came across a crumbling circus tent, its weathered canvas barely holding together. A crooked sign above the entrance read, "The last show," drawing me in despite an uneasy feeling. Stepping inside, the air grew heavy, charged with an odd, electric tension that prickled my skin. The tent was eerily empty, but somewhere in the silence, the haunting notes of a calliope drifted, as if woven into the very air, beckoning me deeper into the strange place. I wandered deeper, feeling an unsettling sense of familiarity. The faded clown posters lining the walls seemed to leer at me, their painted smiles twisted and grotesque. I chuckled nervously, but it felt hollow, as if the joy had been sucked out of the space. Suddenly, a voice boomed from the shadows. "Welcome." Welcome, a figure emerged, draped in tattered clothes, face obscured by layers of paint and grease. "I am Giggles, the last clown of the Grand Lunatic Circus." His smile was too wide, stretching unnaturally across his face, his eyes glinting with something dark. "What happened to the circus?" I asked, trying to mask my unease. He laughed, a deep, unsettling sound that echoed through the tent. "They left me. They didn't understand the art, the beauty of laughter. But I won't be alone anymore." His madness shone through, and a chill crept down my spine. I turned to leave, but the entrance had vanished, replaced by a wall of thick, black canvas. Panic surged through me. "Let me out," I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by silence. Giggles danced closer, his movements jerky and exaggerated. "You don't want to leave yet." The show is just beginning. He produced a series of balloons, each twisted into grotesque shapes, some resembling crying faces, others with sinister grins. "Choose one." "Okay." I shook my head, backing away until I felt the rough canvas behind me. "No, I just want to go home." With a flick of his wrist, the balloons popped one by one, each explosion accompanied by screams that echoed in my mind. My heart raced as I watched the clown's expression morph from joy to fury. "You'll regret that. No one leaves the show without their final act." In an instant, shadows twisted around me, and I was surrounded by a chorus of whispers, lost souls trapped within the tent. They begged for release, their voices melding into a cacophony of despair. Giggles loomed over me, his face inches from mine, paint cracking like a shattered mirror. "Join us, Alice. Become part of the laughter forever." Feeling the pull of the shadows, I was filled with primal fear. I lunged forward, pushing past him, my hands tearing at the fabric of the tent. I could hear his laughter chasing me, a cacophony of madness as I ran blindly into the darkness. But the darkness had eyes. I stumbled, and a hand reached out from the shadows, cold and clammy. I could see their faces now clowns, twisted and broken, their laughter now a haunting wail. "Join us," they cried, their voices echoing in my mind. I fought against the pull, clawing my way to the exit that shimmered in the distance. Just as I reached the threshold, a cold hand clamped down on my shoulder, yanking me back into the abyss. As I fell, I heard Giggles' laughter echoing around me. "You can never escape the circus, Alice. We'll always find you." The world twisted, the tent stretching and contorting as if it were alive, pulsating with the shadows that now danced menacingly around me. Giggles' laughter echoed off the walls, growing louder, more shrill. "We need more acts, Alice. You'll fit in perfectly. Don't you see? The Grand Lunatic Circus never dies." His voice dripped with malice, and I could feel the weight of those words pushing down on me. I spun around, searching for any sign of escape, but every corner was filled with those haunting eyes, staring from the darkness, pleading for release. The clowns, the ones that had been mere whispers before, began to emerge, their once painted faces smeared and grotesque, twisted into masks of eternal suffering. Some held their cheeks as though trying to hold in screams that had long escaped them. Others limped towards me, their eyes hollow and devoid of anything human. Run a voice, faint but distinct, cut through the din of laughter. I whipped my head around, trying to locate the source. A figure unlike the others stood at the far end of the tent, barely visible through the haze. Its outline was soft, the only hint of sanity in this nightmare. "Run," Alice the voice urged again, more insistent now. I hesitated for just a second, the cacophony of Giggle's voice and the looming clowns pulling me in all directions. But then my legs moved on their own. I bolted towards the figure, desperate for escape. The shadows writhed as I passed them, clawing at my feet, trying to drag me back into their cold embrace. The walls of the tent shifted unnaturally, the floor seemed to tilt, and the air was thick with the smell of decay and madness. Giggles appeared in front of me with a suddenness that made me stumble. His once playful expression had twisted into a snarl, his face a horrifying mask of paint and malice. His voice dropped into a low, mocking tone. "You really think you can leave, Alice?" "Nobody ever leaves the Grand Lunatic Circus." His wide grin cracked even further, splitting his face unnaturally as he stepped forward. I scrambled backward, my heart hammering in my chest, but the shadows behind me were relentless. Cold hands wrapped around my arms, tugging me toward them as Giggles closed in, his eyes glittering with something darker than madness. "I'm not like them," I screamed, kicking and thrashing, trying to break free from the suffocating grip of the shadows. But it felt like my strength was being drained, like the very air in the tent was siphoning away my will to fight. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of determination. I wouldn't let this be my end. I tore away from the icy grip and stumbled toward the glimmer of light. With every step, I could hear the whispers growing fainter. "You can't escape," they warned, but I pushed through the panic. Finally, I burst through the tent's fabric, tumbling out into the cool night air. Gasping, I found myself outside, the world spinning around me. I stumbled away from the tent, my heart racing as I ran through the overgrown grass. The stars twinkled above, serene and unaffected by the chaos I had just escaped. I didn't stop until I reached my neighborhood, the familiar houses offering comfort. As I approached my front door, I turned back, half expecting to see the tent looming behind me, its dark secrets waiting to pull me back in. But it was gone, as if it had never existed. I stepped inside my house, locking the door behind me. The silence of my home enveloped me, a stark contrast to the madness I had just fled. I collapsed onto the couch, trembling. I had made it back. But deep down, I knew the shadows would linger. I could still hear Giggles' laughter echoing in my mind, a haunting reminder of the circus that once held me captive. I looked at the clock. It was late. As I tried to calm my racing heart, I felt a chill sweep through the room. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on the mundane surroundings. Everything was fine. I was safe. But when I closed my eyes, the sound returned, a distant, haunting melody that sent chills racing down my spine, the Calliope's eerie tune. I jolted upright, heart pounding, suddenly aware that the circus hadn't truly let me escape. It had embedded itself in my mind, a shadowy presence lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to pull me back into its twisted realm. The days that followed were consumed by an unsettling sense of dread. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as though something unseen was always nearby. I deliberately avoided the outskirts of town, staying far from where the tent had once stood. Yet each night, the music returned, faint and menacing, urging me to remember and luring me back into its dark embrace. I never liked clowns. There was something unsettling about their painted smiles, the way their laughter echoed in the air like a distant bell. But this was just a harmless childhood fear, or so I thought until that summer I spent in Willow Creek, a sleepy town with a penchant for oddities. I had come to stay with my aunt, who ran a small antique shop. Her place was a treasure trove of forgotten relics and dusty trinkets, each with a story etched into its surface. But the most peculiar item was a life-sized clown statue that dominated the corner of the shop, its grin wide and unsettling, with eyes that seemed to follow you wherever you went. Aunt May claimed it was a charming piece from a bygone era, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was somehow alive, watching, waiting. One rainy evening, as the wind howled outside, I decided to explore the attic of the shop, drawn by the promise of hidden stories. The air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked beneath my weight. Among cobwebs and old boxes, I stumbled upon a tattered photo album. Flipping through the pages, I found photographs of the clown statue taken in various locations throughout the years at a fair, a children's birthday party, and even in front of my aunt's shop, dated nearly 100 years ago. But it was the last page that chilled me, a photograph of a group of children laughing, surrounded by a group of clowns. Their faces were smeared with paint, some looking unnaturally joyful, while others wore expressions of confusion and fear. A handwritten note below the photo read the jester's curse play with him, and you'll never leave. I tossed the album aside, a shiver racing down my spine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt amplified, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets. I glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. The flickering streetlights cast ghostly shadows through my window, and that's when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingertips drumming against glass. I peeked out, my heart racing. There, illuminated by the pale moonlight, stood the clown statue, or at least what I thought was the statue. It appeared to be swaying slightly, its painted face eerily illuminated by the faint light. I blinked hard, convincing myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. The following day, Aunt May mentioned a fair was coming to town. "You should go," she said with a knowing smile. "It'll be fun." Her enthusiasm was contagious, so I agreed, eager to shake off the dread that had settled over me like a heavy blanket. The fair was bustling, filled with laughter and the scent of popcorn. Yet, despite the joy around me, I felt a tug of unease. Everywhere I turned, I caught glimpses of the clown, his painted smile lurking at the edge of my vision, a spectral presence that made my skin crawl. As night fell, I wandered toward a small tent marked the jester's show. The air outside felt charged, buzzing with an energy that was almost electric. I entered, my curiosity overpowering my fear. Inside, a dimly lit stage awaited, and on it stood a single spotlight, illuminating a figure in a tattered clown costume. His face was painted in grotesque hues, a rictus grin stretched unnaturally across his face. "Welcome, welcome," he crooned, his voice a blend of honey and venom. "Who among you dares to join me in a game?" My heart raced. Something about his demeanor felt wrong, sinister. As I turned to leave, a gust of wind slammed the tent flaps shut. Panic washed over me. The clown's eyes locked onto mine, and for a brief moment I felt the weight of his gaze suffocating. "Don't be shy. Come, come." He beckoned, his voice dripping with an unsettling enthusiasm. With no other option, I stepped forward. The room twisted, shadows dancing on the walls like specters of forgotten souls. "Let's play a game of laughter," he exclaimed. "For every laugh you give me, I'll grant you a wish." The audience, if you could call them that, was a mixture of children and adults, their faces frozen in expressions of fear and fascination. I felt compelled to play, my heart pounding in my chest. I forced a laugh, a sound that felt foreign to my throat. The clown clapped, the sound echoing like thunder. "Very good. Now let's see how far you can go with that." He produced a balloon animal, twisting it expertly into a grotesque shape. But beware, each laugh comes with a price. One by one, people began to join in, laughter mingling with nervousness. Each chuckle seemed to fuel the clown's energy, and with every laugh, the atmosphere thickened with dread. As I looked around, I noticed the crowd's expressions change, their laughter turning hollow, their eyes vacant. It hit me like a cold wave. I wasn't playing a game, I was trapped. The tent began to shrink, the shadows closing in. The clown laughed, a sound that echoed and twisted in my mind. I was losing myself in the chaos, my thoughts blurring, each chuckle chaining me deeper into the madness. With a surge of desperation, I broke away, pushing past the entranced crowd. As I stumbled outside, the fairground felt transformed, the colors muted, the laughter a hollow echo. I ran, my heart pounding, the clown's laughter trailing behind me like a sinister melody. I barely made it back to my aunt's shop. The door slammed shut behind me, and I collapsed against it, gasping for breath. But as I looked around, I felt a creeping dread wash over me again. The clown statue stood where I had left it, its painted smile even wider, as if mocking my fear. Days passed, but the clown haunted me. I could feel its eyes watching from the corner, even when I closed my eyes. I avoided the attic, the fair, and even my aunt's comforting presence. It began innocently enough. I was sitting on the worn leather couch of my small apartment, scrolling through social media, when I saw an ad for the local carnival. It promised thrilling rides, delicious snacks, and most importantly a circus show featuring the great Mordecus, a clown known for his mesmerizing performances. Clowns had always fascinated me, their painted smiles masking the unknown beneath. I felt an inexplicable pull and decided I had to go. The evening of the carnival arrived, and the air was thick with the scent of popcorn and fried dough. Bright lights flickered like distant stars, illuminating the laughter of children and the hum of excited voices. As I wandered through the throng, I felt the anticipation build within me, mingling with an underlying sense of unease. Finally, I found the tent where the circus show would take place. The entrance was draped in tattered red velvet, and the sounds of carnival music seeped through. I stepped inside, and the atmosphere shifted. The dim lighting cast long shadows, making the edges of reality blur. My heart raced as I found a seat in the front row. The show began with a troupe of acrobats flipping gracefully through the air, but it was Mordecus who captivated me. He emerged from the shadows with exaggerated movements, his face painted a grotesque white with a wide, crimson smile that seemed to stretch beyond the bounds of human expression. His laughter echoed eerily, sending a shiver down my spine. As Mordecus performed, I noticed something unsettling. There was an odd stillness in the audience. People were glued to their seats, eyes wide and unblinking, as if caught in a trance. I glanced around, feeling a pang of fear. I was not entranced, I was merely terrified. Then Mordecus locked eyes with me, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. His smile widened, and in that moment, I sensed a deep, insatiable hunger behind his gaze. I could hardly breathe as he began to mime, exaggeratedly pretending to juggle invisible balls. Each toss seemed to echo with sinister intent, and I found myself involuntarily clenching the arms of my chair. Suddenly, the lights flickered. For a brief moment, the tent plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, the atmosphere had shifted. Mordecus was no longer juggling, he stood eerily still, his eyes now piercing through the dim light, surveying the audience as if he were selecting his next victim. A wave of dread washed over me. He turned and began to walk toward me, his exaggerated, clownish gait somehow unnerving. I wanted to flee but felt glued to my seat. The world around me dissolved into a blur of sound and color, and all I could see was him, his smile growing wider, teeth too sharp, eyes too bright. As he approached, I noticed something I hadn't before: the slight drip of something dark and viscous from his sleeve, pooling at his feet. My stomach churned as I realized it wasn't just paint, it looked like blood. Panic surged through me, and I finally managed to stand, stumbling backward. The audience, now silent, turned their heads in unison, their expressions vacant and hollow. "Stay with us," Mordecus's voice boomed, resonating in my bones. "The fun is just beginning." I tore my gaze away and fled the tent. Outside, the carnival seemed to have transformed. The vibrant lights dimmed and laughter faded into unsettling whispers. The once familiar carnival now felt like a twisted nightmare, a carnival lost to time, where joy had been replaced by something far more sinister. I ran through the maze of tents, desperate to escape, but the path seemed to stretch endlessly. Shadows flickered just out of the corner of my eye, and I could swear I heard Mordecus's laughter trailing behind me. But as I turned to look back, I saw the tent collapsing in on itself, as if it had never existed. The laughter, the lights all gone. Only the echo of Mordecus's laughter remained, hanging in the air like a chilling reminder of my encounter. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to forget the carnival, the clown, the haunting laughter that still echoed in my dreams. But then, one evening, I heard a familiar sound of faint laughter, twisted and joyful. It lingered just outside my window,